Right. So, title is Elementals, Petal Power and Spring Greens. And tonight's chat is going to be about edibles or edimentals, which is edible ornamental plants. Edimentals, which is edible ornamental plants, a term that was coined by Stephen Barstow. And Stephen is a super chap from originally from England, but as a young man he moved over to Norway, and when he's a vegetarian as well, and when he moved over to Norway he was dismayed by the lack of plants to be, for eating in shops and all the rest of it. So he decided that was it. He was going to start growing his own food, and so began a 30-year-long love affair of growing unusual perennial plants for eating. And Stephen is pretty much up there in the Arctic Circle almost. He's up by Trondheim. So if it can grow for Stephen, it can definitely grow for us. Stephen, he at the moment he's in excess of 2,000 plants in his garden, probably more at this stage. And in 2003, he earned the title Extreme Salad Man because he put together a salad with 537 different plants in it, plants and flowers, which is pretty incredible. I tried doing it once and I got as far as about 100, and that was brilliant enough in my books. 100 items in your salad. He went for 537. But Stephen wrote a book called Around the World in 80 Plants, and if you can get your hands on this book, it's absolutely fabulous. Really, really great. Stephen did a talk a couple of years ago for Neil Porteous up in Mount Stewart, and just before he went up to Neil, he came and stayed a few days with me and my crew. And we went and we did a kind of a whistle stop tour of a few gardens around the locality, around Wicklow, and it was just lovely to have him with us. He's a tonic and he's a mind full of information. So his book is well worth getting your hands on. He also has a website and a blog, which is extremely interesting. But anyway, to get us started, so before I go on any further, I just want to tell you that I'm going to split this into 3 parts. We're going to look at edible flowers, edible leaves, or spring greens, and we are going to just take a quick look at mine and Wendy Nairn's garden. It's called Wow Edimentals, and we'll just take a quick look at that. It's a COVID project, and it's just a year old, so we'll just have a little chat about that at the end. But okay, so to get us started, there are so many, there's 3,000, depending on what sources you go for. There's roughly 3,000 edible plant species in the world. And at the moment, we eat about 200 of those. And of course, we are, we're subject to what we can get in the shops, and we're subject to what we can get in our local supermarkets, and so on and so forth. And it's just incredible how narrow our choices have become. I mean, if you even take the likes of apples, I mean, if you go into Tesco's, or God forgive me for if you go into your local supermarket, the chances of you getting maybe 3 or 4, maybe even 5 different types of apples, you'd be really, really lucky. And when you think about it, there is an average about, I don't know, I think it's about, have it written down somewhere. It's, there's in excess of 300 different varieties of apples worldwide. So potential 7,500 different varieties of apples. So you can see how limited our choices of food are becoming. If after today's talk, you can add a couple of extra bits and pieces from your own garden into your diet, we're win-win. We're on a roll. I mean, anybody who's anyway interested in nutritionists will tell us we should be increasing the amount of foods that we are eating for our gut biome and for our general health. So if you can add a few of those extra in from your garden, brilliant, all the better. So the hook for me, I mean, just look at it. Any chef will tell you, we eat with our eyes, and we're visual creatures. We like the look of food. We don't eat grey, disgusting, horrible food. We eat bright, vibrant food. We're enticed by that sort of food. So, look at those colors. I mean, if you could make a feast out of that, I mean, you're just it's visually exciting, and exciting on the taste buds as well. Here's just a couple that I had kind of in a file. This is a kale salad, a raw kale salad, which is really, really delicious. But when you add in the additions of the flower petals into it, it really does become so vibrant and beautiful. I mean, there's violas, cornflowers, there's calendula in there. There's little pinks in there, and there's some rose petals as well. Delicious. Another one, this is a herb salad that I do. I love doing herb salads. Herb salads are like just anything from the garden. So there could be things like mallow leaves, strawberry leaves, mince, lemon balm, anything, chives, all chopped up along with your lettuce. I mean, add in the lettuce as well and just shred them up. I shred them up because sometimes like if you've got a full mint leaf, say, in your mouth, the taste can be really overpowering. But if you have just a tiny taste of mint along with everything else, you get these lovely balance of flavors, which is really, really delicious. And then you just add in all of those beautiful colors, those violas, the nasturtiums, which are really spicy. There's pachyphragma, or maybe that's cranberry cordifolia, actually, cranberry cordifolia flowers, mallow flowers. I mean, it's delicious. And then, of course, from the sublime to the ridiculous, you can go absolutely overboard on your cakes. I think I made this particular one for my sister, and she turned around the wagon and she said that it looked like one of those hats from that the women in the 1950s used to wear, a swim hat from the 1950s. So you can go overboard, just even hand with these things. But anyway, so to get started, we're going to look at edible flowers first, then we're going to look at spring greens, and then we're going to do a teeny bit on the wow garden. So starting off with the edible flowers, the holy trinity, I suppose, of edible flowers. And these are so easy to grow. You can, if you have no space at all, just stick them in a window box. I mean, they're so easy and so lovely and so bright, and we'll just keep giving you flowers to add into your to dishes. I mean, the first one there, the little violas, pansies, all of that family are edible. Everything from the little small tiny wild heart seeds all the way, up to the blousiest of bedding plants that you can find. Obviously, there's caveats in all of this. Not, first of all, a main caveat, I suppose, is not every single flower is edible. So you have to be extremely careful along with everything else. You've got to know what you're eating. It's the same as foraging. You just, pick once, check twice almost, it is really important to know what you're going in, because there are plants out there that can make you very, very sick or can kill you. So, Agatha Christie killed off loads of people with, foxgloves and belladonna, and, these things are not bear's breeches, what's it called? Wolfbane, which is certainly growing out in my front garden, and I tempt the husband with it all the time. But the little heartsies, the little pansies, I mean, they are just wonderful. Oh, the second caveat, of course, is if you are buying pansies from the likes of, or if you're buying any plants from the likes of nurseries or the woodies, places like that, let them go through a couple of growing seasons before you start eating them, because obviously they've been treated, and you just wouldn't know what chemicals are on them. So I would avoid eating stuff from the likes of, that have come straight off woodies or out of Holland or whatever. The best way to do it is grow your own from seed, or let them go through a year or two before you start eating them. Hard to do with annuals, of course, but if you're talking about annuals, just grow your own. It's the best way to do it. So the little viola then is an ancient symbol of Athens, of ancient Athens, is a symbol of ancient Athens, and it was said to to quell anger and to protect the heart, strengthen the heart. It's just such a great little flower to add into teas. It's absolutely. I was watching the Edible Girls up the north. They are doing trials at the moment where they're adding them into gins. I've added them into gins before. They're absolutely delicious. Also into vinegars. They're trialing different varieties to see the different vibrancy and colors that you can get. They're super. They're absolutely super. They're great. The leaves are also edible. They can go from very mild flavor to very strong flavor. So again, it's worth just trying a few just to see. The one that I grow on the land is one that I got from Jimmy Blake, and it is a viola. I think it's in Uri Beauty, but it is an extraordinary taste, and it's really tasty, really delicious, and the leaves are very good in it too. Next one then is cornflowers, and I love cornflowers because I collect the flowers, the petals. It's the petals that you eat. I collect the petals in summertime, and then I dehydrate them or dry them, and they last me the whole winter, and they're just phenomenal. In fact, they are wonderful as a food dye. You can take the dry flowers and you can mash them up in a mortar and pestle, or in any sort of grinding machine until they turn into a powder, and then you can use the powder as a food dye. It's super. But taking those petals, just add them into salads, add them into cream cheese, add them into creme fraiche, or when you're making ice cream, and they're just so good. They have a very mild clove flavor, which is very delicate and very tasty. And the colors are so vibrant. And of course, now you can get them in pinks and mauves and purples and dark purples. So there's huge variety to choose from. And then, of course, the last of the trilogy is the nasturtiums. And nasturtiums are just wonderful. I mean, you can pretty much use the whole plant. The flower itself is spicy and lovely in a salad. Wendy, my pal, used to grow flowers for a local chef, and the local chef used to do I think it was a 7-course meal with flowers, purely flowers. And one of the dishes that she used to do with this is she used to do a lovely cream cheese, like a flavored cream cheese mix, and she used to put it into the center of the nasturtium, and you'd eat it as like an hors d'oeuvre. And it was delicious, absolutely delicious. I've tried it; it is lovely. But they are just great in salads, or again on your rice dishes. They're really tasty. The leaves then the young leaves are super, and you can add them into their mild spicy flavor, and you can add them peppery flavor. You can add them into salads. And then, of course, the older leaves, you can make pesto out of them, which is very, very handy, and it makes a lovely pesto. And of course you can add them into smoothies or juices or anything like that. They're great. The seeds then, the little seeds that it makes as it's going over, these, when you collect them, they're a lovely sort of hard 1 centimeter piece seed, lovely tasty, nutty kind of flavor. Beautiful when you pickle them, or ferment. Ferment is nearly even nicer. But when you pickle them and then you use them later on as capers, and they are as a substitute for capers in any recipe, they're really, really tasty. I then also use them as kind of croutons in a salad, really tasty. But again, lovely. Those little piquant flavors are lovely when you add them into, again, potato salads, or I'm just thinking of summer dishes, potato salads, anything like that. Really, really tasty. Mixed with chickpeas, they're gorgeous as well. Anyway, on to the next one. Calendula, another great plant. Fabulous. Every garden should have calendula in it. Such a bright, cheery flower anyway, apart if you were never going to eat it or use it. I mean, it is a brilliant plant to use to grow. It's an annual, so it comes up in the springtime and dies back down. Having said that, if you have a warm enough, mild enough area, they actually can go a couple of years. They can last 2 or 3 years before dying off completely. They do get a bit scraggly though. But certainly if you have a warm enough area, they will actually last through the winter for you. They're great. They're lovely in a tunnel. If you have a tunnel or a sheltered glass house, you can have calendula all year round. But they are a great, great plant. And there are so many different varieties out there now at the moment. There's one particular one that I grow called Indian Prince, and it is just the prettiest thing ever. Dark, dark chocolate brown center with this bright, bright, vibrant orange flower. It's a great plant, and it's a great plant for the pollinators as well. Now, when it comes to the culinary side or medicinal side, it's equally important, because from a culinary point of view, what I do with these is petals go straight again into salads, into cheeses or ice creams or creme fraiche. You can make lovely salsas with the marigolds in creme fraiche. Dried petals go lovely into, they dry up beautifully and they hold their color. They go into rice dishes. In fact, there was a common name for it called poor man saffron, because it not only does it flavor it, it also colors the rice as well, using that lovely yellow saffrony, not as vibrant as saffron. It's not, but it is a nice thing to add to rice dishes, particularly if you like those Persian dishes. It's brilliant, absolutely brilliant. Ottolenghi, eat your heart out, is what I say. But then, of course, medicinally, this is a brilliant plant medicinally, because it has great properties to soothe skin. And not only skin, also your digestion as well. So if you suffer from any sort of eczema, or even just burns or garden, the way us gardeners are always tearing up our hands and wrecking our fingers and all the rest of it, it makes the most amazing salve. And you can make your own salves. There's plenty of instructions on YouTube for this. But one of the nice things to do is actually do a cold compress, where you soak the petals in olive oil, and you just let it sit on a windowsill, a warm windowsill, and over a couple of weeks the properties will infuse into the olive oil, and then you could just use the olive oil to rub into your skin, and it's beautiful. It's really, really lovely. You can of course use this for cooking as well, and it's equally lovely in salad dressings. Great. So it's an all-rounder. If you were using, I know some of you out there make your own soaps, and it's wonderful to use in soap making. Then medicinally, of course, one of the nice things to do, and you can say this is medicinal or otherwise, but I add the petals to vodka. Actually, this one I do vodka. And I let the petals sit in the vodka for about probably 4 to 6 weeks. And then you strain out the petals, and you can use the petals will color the vodka to this lovely golden color, but it'll also slightly flavor it. But of course, with the alcohol, you are imparting the medicinal qualities of the marigold into it. So you can use it as a digestif after meals or before meals, whichever. And certainly if you want to use it as a tincture, then if you have a stomach upset, a small tiny teaspoon is really, really good. But it's a wonderful plant, and it's well worth having in your garden. Super, super plant. Of course, dahlias, of all the flowers, I think this is my favorite. Well, one of my favorites. I've loads of favorites, but this is a really tremendous plant, and we grow loads of them in the Wow Garden. Um, the flowers are edible, the young shoots are edible, the buds are edible, and even the roots, when you're dividing up this plant, are edible as well. The flowers have a lovely crunchy flavor, crunchy, fresh, almost pea-like flavor to them. You can eat them raw in salads or into rice dishes, or even just use it as a garnish on a summer plate. It's just lovely. But then it's the young buds. I think the young buds are almost, the best part of the plant, in my opinion. They have a lovely pea-like, again, pea cucumber-like flavor. But if you pan fry, if you cook them, the flavor changes almost completely, and they are delicious. I have done them steamed. I have done them boiled. Is no good. There's no point in doing. You could actually, never mind boil. You could just blanch them quickly in boiling water. They'd be lovely. But I've also pan fried them. I have steamed them, and they're delicious. They are huge. They're grown commercially in Asia for food, not for flowers at all. But according to the Hemerocallis Society of America, there's 72,000 species, varieties, not species, varieties of Hemerocallis on their database. I can't tell you that every single one of those ones are edible, but certainly all of the fulva family, the FULVA family, they are definitely edible. And it tends to be, some are better than others, but it tends to be the yellow and the oranges that are the tastiest. They're a great plant, though, an absolute great plant to have in your garden, and well worth growing. The buds can also be dried and saved for winter use, and they can be used in stir fries, in soups. They're just so versatile, really great. Begonias. I mean, who knew begonias? Those old-fashioned bedding plants. Look at them, but they are so tasty. The flowers, like, again, the flowers, the stems, the leaves, the sap from the plant, even the tuber, from what I understand. I've never eaten the tuber, but even the tuber on the tuber varieties is edible as well. The flowers, though, are, in my opinion, the flowers and the leaves are the best part ever, because the flowers taste like little zings of sherbet going off in your mouth. They are delicious. And talk about impressing your guests when you bring out the salad and they have, they're munching away, and then all of a sudden these little faces kind of lighten up because they think they've just eaten something bizarre, exotic. But they are really, really great, and they are all edible. Again, some are nicer than others, but they really are well worth having in your garden, in your window box. I mean, they're just wonderful. The stems as well can be eaten. They're a bit like rhubarb, a very sweet rhubarb. And you can add those to smoothies if you ever make smoothies, and they're really, really good. Next, of course, then is the rose. I mean, if anybody's into Persian cooking, you can't go anywhere without having roses. It's been used for thousands of years in Persian cooking, from the likes of rose water to ras el hanout is a Moroccan spice, which is the primary component of ras el hanout is rose petals. Dried rose petals. But certainly, I mean, they are such a versatile. You can eat them. Every single rose is edible, but some are better than the others and than others. And definitely, as you go down to the white part of a rose, I would generally just pull that bit off because it can be very bitter. But the main part of the petal is they're so tasty. Worth trying a few different types just to find the one that you like best. Gallica roses, damask roses, Rosa rugosa, all of those, I mean, they are really, really well worth having in your garden if you possibly can. Rosa rugosa, of course, puts on those massive big hips as well, which are just buckets of vitamin C. And a syrup can be made from that. And it should be an arsenal in everybody's medicine cabinet, having that. It's really, really good. And I'm sure all of your grandmothers would never have been without, grandmothers or grandfathers would never have been without their vitamin C from Rosa rugosa, or from rose hips. What else can you do? I dry the petals. I keep the petals fresh and I put them into salads or rice dishes or um, pilafs, into use them on cakes. You can again then dry the petals. I dry the petals and I make them into teas. They're beautiful in teas, along with the leaves. Actually, if you dry the leaves and put them into tea as well, they're so good. And medicinally, I'm no herbalist, but I know that they have fantastic properties, and I'm sure if there's any herbalist out there, they will equally tell us how good they are for us. Um, they are, but they're just lovely, and they're warming. They're lovely warming teas, and lovely to have in winter. Those rose petals are wonderful to have in winter. Um, Great plant to have, and of course, do make your syrups as well from the petals and from the hips. Oops, sorry. Next one, alliums. Oh my God, we could be here all night with alliums. I mean, such a huge family. There's tons of them, and even in the Wow Garden, I think we're getting slightly addicted to alliums. We've tons of them. We've things like nodding onions, bunching onions. We've got Babington's leek. We've got what else do we have? Japanese onions. We've got zurami, which is allium hookeri. We've got, oh my gosh, we've tons and tons of them, and everything in that. Oh my God, how could I forget chives? I mean, every family or every household should have chives in their garden in some place or another. It is such a valuable plant. Everything from adding into salads, add the flowers into salads, chop up the leaves into salads or into soups. As a walker, I like to make my egg sambos for going up the hills. And gosh, this is very contentious now because me and my friend go walking up the hills. She likes egg and onion sandwiches, and I'm not that great in egg and onion sandwiches. So our compromise was egg and chive flowers. So that was our compromise. But they really are great for adding into cheeses, into any sandwiches. If you just throw a few chive flowers in, they're so tasty, so tasty. Well worth having. Babington's leek then is another great one to have in the garden, and Babington's leek propagates itself by putting on little bulbils, which of course you can eat as well. They're great. But the little bulbils will, as the plant goes up, they drop. And then of course they self propagate themselves in your garden. So once you have Babington's leek, you tend to have it for a long time anyway, unless you really, really get rid of it. But what I like to do with Babington's leek is I let a patch go, and then say, from my patch, I kind of cull, say, a third of it, and I eat the third in the kitchen. You just pull it up, and it pulls up, like, because obviously once you pull up this plant, that's it. It's pretty much gone, unless you leave some of the bulb underneath. But you just pull it up, and then you eat it like a young leek, and it is so tasty. It's so tasty. It's milder than our strong leek flavors, and it is really, really great to have. And of course, it's just perennial crop. It just keeps coming back, and it's fantastic. So the two we have there are nodding onions and Welsh onions. Nodding onion, again, is such a pretty little onion to have in the garden. And Welsh onions, harder to get your hands on, but Welsh onions are a perennial onion, and they are so tasty and so pretty and incredibly good for bees. Bees love them. Onwards, we have the mallow family, and pretty much all in the mallow family are edible. Certainly the flowers anyway are edible, and that includes hollyhocks, all the lavateras, what do they call it? Marshmallows, our common mallows, loads of them. All, now again, before you go eating anything, do double check it. But I keep the lovely white marshmallow growing in the garden, and also the common mallow, and a couple of lavateras as well, and of course hollyhocks, and they are all fabulous. And it's the flowers that you eat. Take out the center stipples; they can be a bit bitter, but the petals themselves are lovely. The young leaves are great. The older leaves are great as well if you add them to soups for thickening. It's a way of thickening soups. And then, of course, after the flowers go, they make these little seed packets, little round donuts. And if you eat the little seeds, they are so good for you and so nutty and mild and lovely. I tend to pick them and put them into salads as croutons, and they are really, really good, really, really tasty. Get them as young as you can when they're still green. Don't let them go brown when they're fully ripe. Next, then we have magnolias. I mean, who knew? Here's another who knew moment. And of course, I know as gardeners, if you're growing young magnolia trees and you've only got a handful, maybe 10 or 15 flowers, the last thing you want to do is eat them. But if you're lucky enough to have a mature magnolia in your garden and it has tons of flowers, well, then definitely give them a go, because they have this lovely mild ginger flavor. And one of the things I do with them is, and again, you'll find, or, I can certainly post up recipes for doing these pickles, but I pickle it and the flavor is it's gorgeous. It's a lovely, lovely mild ginger flavor, and they are just really good to have. Say you're making a ploughman's cheese sandwich or something like that, add them into that. Or you were doing a cheese board, even just a cheese board, and you're adding it, like you wanted to add some pickles into them. They're fabulous. Into salads. They're just lovely, very, very versatile, and so different. I mean, who's going to serve you magnolia flowers? Here we go on to bergamot then. Bergamot, Menards, or Bee-Balm. This is one that I'm so excited for down in the Wow garden, because I actually have space to grow it in the Wow garden. In my own garden, they're not so great because my garden, everything is too crowded. So they don't like to be crowded. So if you can afford to give them a little bit of space, brilliant. But they are such a good plant to have. The flowers are very, very tasty. They have a lovely sweet flavor. And then the leaves and the stems are also edible, but they are, with a very even hand, because they're quite strong in flavor. So I tend to just take a couple of leaves and shred them up and add them into a salad. One of the best things to do, and the Oswego tribe in America were famous for this, was to make a tea out of it. The European settlers then kind of decided how fabulous it was, and adopted it. And so, kind of made it more popular. But not to be confused now with bergamot orange, which is, it's different, and that goes into Earl Grey. But this equally makes a lovely tea, and it's well worth drying the leaves just to keep for teas. Even fresh, they're lovely as tea, but they are a great plant. And again, now you can get them in so many different colors and so many different, from blues, light mauves, purples, dark reds, bright reds. I mean, it's a great plant. And again, the insects love them in a garden. Lilac and lavender then. Lilac and lavender. I mean, my poor grandmother, or great grandmother, actually, not grandmother, even further back, would turn in her grave if you even suggested bringing lilac into a house. But going above and beyond superstition, it is a lovely thing, especially these summer mornings. If you started to make kind of nice breakfasts for yourself, like chia puddings, or, even overnight oats or anything like that, when the lavender comes out, if you just take a couple of the little flowers and just kind of put it on the top, it is so pretty and so lovely, and just imparts that lovely little bit of flavor. But in actual fact, the best way to get the flavor from lilac and lavender, actually, but lilac first, we'll do with lilac first, is to soak the lavender, add the lavender to creams, let it sit overnight, and then strain off the flowers and use the creams later on for for cooking or for just pouring. Gosh, if you wanted to make your overnight oats and then add a little bit of cream on top, very decadent, but very delicious. Lilac then, on the other hand, is another one that you just have to be extremely even-handed with, because it goes from fabulous flavor, beautiful flavor, to, soapy disinfectant very, very quickly. So I find the best thing to do with lilac is take the flowers and not soak them, and put them into sugar. Caster sugar is what I use because I would do an awful lot of baking, and then I use the caster sugar just sprinkled or mixed into recipes, and it is really good. I dry the petals as well, and I use them very even-handedly in shortbread. It's very, very tasty. And then, of course, if you just add them into cream as well, you can do exactly the same as the lilac. And in fact, if you add them into cream, it's a lovely thing then to go and make ice cream if you're lucky enough to have an ice cream maker, or you can make it physically yourself. It's just a bit of hard work. But if you have an ice cream maker like I have, it is a lovely thing to do, is to make lilac ice cream. And again, do it with the lilac infused cream rather than lilac or lavender itself. So a great one to have. Dahlias. Dahlias again, dahlias are such an old plant and were probably brought into Europe in and around, I don't know, 15th, 16th century. But of course, they were brought in as a food crop. But the budding gardeners of the time and later on, particularly with the Victorians, decided that the flowers were far too nice to be used as a crop. And also because they cross so easily, they could be, propagated and hybridized, to your heart's content, bringing, and very excitingly to make new different varieties. So the Victorians definitely went from tuber crop or from food crop to flowers very, very quickly. But of course, they are all edible. Some of them are better than others because they've been hybridized so much. But if you take the petals don't really taste of much. It's more so the tubers. But if you take the petals and just add them to salads, they're so delicious, or garnishes, or, the bigger petals, if you add little, hors d'oeuvres to it, or, they're just, the only limitation is your imagination, really. They're so, so good. And they're so bright and so cheery and so wonderful and so varied. When it comes to the tubers, it's a different kettle of fish. And we'll talk about those again at a later stage. But the tubers are fantastic. My poor kids, a lot of the recipes were trialed on my kids. And I'm sure Childline would have something to say about that. But anyway, the thing with it is that some of them are definitely better than others. But when you find your nice variety, and I find the single flowered, or the cactus flowered, cactus orange flowered varieties, or the species varieties are all the best. They tend to have the biggest and better tubers for eating, but they're well worth trying. And you can roast them, you can grate them. In fact, one of the recipes I tried on the kids was a happy pear beetroot burger recipe. So while all my kids ever wanted was, McDonald's, they got Dahlia burgers instead. But anyway, I'm sure they'll thank me one day, or else they'll blame me, one or the other. But they are wonderful and well worth trying. Aca is another tuber crop that we'll go into at a later stage, but aca is such a fabulous plant. I just had to add it in there to show you the flowers. The flowers are they're really, really pretty little flower, but they are a tasty little flower as well. But also those leaves are from they're the Oxalis family. So they have that sour sally taste. Which is very, very tasty and lovely again to add into salads. It's a handy one because, again, like that, they're not overpowering and they're small leaves. So, they're just wonderful to have in. So then we move on to our edible greens. Now these are spring greens. I've tried to go for spring greens here. Some have gone over and some are still, still to be had in the garden. But if we start, we go for hostas. Now forget your asparagus and forget your lovely green salads and all the rest of it. Say hello to hostas. Hostas are the unsung heroes of our gardens. And I know as gardeners, it's hard enough keeping slugs off them, never mind having, you know, somebody coming along and eating your hostas. But at the same time, in spring, when they're just about to unfurl, those lovely unfurling leaves that are coming out now, if you cut, say, a third of the plant, you are not going to do the plant one jot of harm. In fact, you're probably going to promote more growth. So consider all you're doing is pruning. Okay. And it's well worth trying them. They can be eaten raw, of course, but they are better either steamed, pan fried, or I mean, you can blanch them, of course, as well. And I saw recently, Stephen Barstow, what he's doing is he's like with rhubarb, he's forcing them. So he's putting a cover over the young plant as the shoots are just coming up, and he's excluding all the light from it. So you get these lovely blanched leaves, and they're very, very sweet. Not that these leaves, when they're very young like that, they're not bitter, but as they get slightly older, they will get more bitter. But if you are to try nothing this year, try the flowers. If you're lucky enough to have hostas in your garden and it goes to flower, just try eating the flowers. They are delicious and well worth it. Fennel is another beauty. Fennel is, and we're talking about herb fennel, not bulb fennel, Florence fennel, which is the bulb fennel. Herb fennel is such an architectural plant now. I know Jimmy uses it, Jimmy Blake uses it in his garden loads now. I've seen other gardeners doing it as well. It is a lovely architectural plant to have in your garden, and it has all of those qualities of being, you know, beautifully architectural, but see-through and moving in your garden, adding movement and all the rest. So it's a great plant. But above and beyond how beautiful it is in your garden, it is an extraordinarily useful plant as well, because those lovely young green ferns that, you know, ferny growth that comes out is fabulous in a salad, delicious in, again, if you mix it into cheeses or eggs, or for fish, if you want to use it as a dill alternative, it is really, really good to have. Then as the plant progresses, you get the beautiful flowers, the umbellifer flowers. And those plants, those umbellifers, as we know, all umbellifers, but particularly this guy, are like, oh, they're like insect hotels almost, or insect landing pads, because they are just fabulous for insects. But apart from the insects, if you can, you know, share with your insect population in your garden, take some of the young flowers and add them into salads, or into, I know I keep mentioning potato salad, but I keep thinking of summer salads, and potato salad is a warm potato salad is just yum, with a vinaigrette. So if you're making new potatoes, put a vinaigrette over the top of it, and then just add the fennel flowers in. Oh, fabulous, absolutely delicious. And then after the flowers, you have the lovely green seeds, and the green seeds are again gorgeous to use in salads. And then moving on, as the seeds mature, you have the brown seeds. They dry out on the plant. I harvest those and I keep them for the winter, and I use those in curries, and again in all sorts of salads. Like if I'm doing up a beetroot salad, a grated beetroot and fennel salad, or I'd add in fennel seeds into it, or, you know, there's tons of salads that you can do with those, not just our ordinary, you know, leafy green salads. They're great to have. Solomon seal has probably just gone over now in all our gardens, but it's those young shoots. It's known as poor man's asparagus, and it pretty much is a bit like that. It's not asparagus. I'm not going to say it's as good as asparagus, but you know, as a spring green coming up, it's well worth harvesting. Again, with your Solomon seal, you can probably go for a third of the young shoots coming up and not do any harm whatsoever to the plant. Herbally, or medicinally, this plant is great for bruises, or as a poultice, made into a poultice for bruises, and just minor grazes, anything like that. It's a good one to have in the garden. If we move on then to beech leaves, you can see they're just starting to come out now. Some are out, down in more sheltered areas, they might already be out. But it's when they are that transparent green, that lovely cathedral, you can see through them. They're so beautiful. If you harvest those, you can add them into salads as a green salad, and they are great. They're great for bulking up, along with tilia, which we'll talk about in a minute now as well. But I think one of the best things to do with beech leaves is to make an alcoholic drink called Noi. It's a liqueur. And Noi hails from the Chilterns in the UK, in England. It was a traditional drink over there. And basically what you do is you get a Kilner jar or a big jar, and you just pack it with loads and loads and loads of those young spring, beautiful leaves, pack it down, pour a bottle of gin. It doesn't have to be the good stuff. It can be something from our German supermarkets, and you just pour it in on top. Then put in something like a sterilized stone or weight, just to keep the leaves below the liquid, and cover it over with a muslin cloth or whatever, just to keep anything off it, dirt or whatever, and put it into a darkened room and let it sit there for as long as you can, but at least 6 weeks. And then once you can wait no longer, take it out, distill off the liquid, and get rid of the leaves. I'm not actually sure if you can put them into compost. Can you put alcoholic plants? I'm not sure. I'm not sure. Okay, so maybe just hang on to that thought. But anyway, it's the liquid we're talking about here. So take the liquid, have a taste at this stage. I prefer it like this because I like that schnapps flavor. But if you like something a little bit, more sweetened, like a liqueur, then at this stage add in a sugar syrup. And then if you're adding in the sugar syrup, leave it sit for another week or two before you drink it. And then you can just have it in small little shot glasses, or you can have it over ice, or you can add it to cocktails. It is delicious. And again, delicious as a digestif or an aperitif or whatever. The other thing, of course, with beech, and for later on in the year, is beech mast. And beech mast is the little nuts that beech puts on. A great source of food. However, the most finicky thing to open, because not only do you have to open that outer shell, you then have to open a little inner shell as well, and then you eat the nut. And no wonder it was never done commercially, because it's far too finicky. But if you're out walking in the woods with, on your own, or with the dog, or with the kids or whatever, it's a great thing to nibble on. Tilia, as I mentioned before, is a wonderful tree for young leaves. Now it's the young leaves, and these are great as a filler for, that sort of hungry gap when you're waiting for the salads to come through. It's a great a green plant to add into your green salad. The thing with tilia is it's a great agroforestry plant as well. What they do in agroforestry, in food forest situations, is they grow the tilia, then they pollard it at about maybe 5 foot high or 6 foot high or whatever, and then you pollard it every 5 or 6 years, and every year you get a profusion of these young growths coming out with young leaves, and it's a great way to harvest those lovely young leaves. Later on in the year, then there are flowers, and again, it's the young flowers that you use in tea. Now, again, I am no herbalist, but I do know there is something about linden flowers. You do have to be very, very even-handed with it. So before you go drinking the tea, do check it out with a herbalist, or have a look at it and see. I'm in the back of my mind, I know there's something about drinking too much linden flower tea. Now, it's not 1 or 2 cups is never going to harm you, but too much you might just be careful with it. Mint, oh my God, mints. And again, in our wild garden, we grow loads of mints because we love mints. I love mints. Mints are so useful to have. They're great in salads, shredded into salads, shredded into creme fraiche, make salsas with them. They are fabulous in mojitos. Anyway, we move on from mojitos. They are fabulous in liqueurs. They're fabulous again in, you can add them to vodkas and let them sit, and you can add them to vinegars. So wonderful in vinegars for imparting a really, lovely flavor to vinegars. So many herbs are brilliant to add to vinegars. It's a great way of keeping that flavor going throughout the year. It is just delicious. But mints come in so many different forms as well. Like, I mean, you have everything from peppermint, spearmint, apple mint, chocolate mint. I'm just thinking of some of the ones we have up in the land. What other ones do we have? Oh, we've loads of them, absolutely loads of them, and they are so good. Of course, in the land, they are used to keep down the grasses. I'll tell you about that later. But in your own garden, you just need to be careful, because they can run amok. They do run amok. There's no doubt about it. They do run amok. So, if you are keeping them in your own garden, just be very careful. Keep them in a pot or in a contained area. But it is well worth having. Crambe maritiма or Crambe cordifolia then are two of the sea kales. Crambe cordifolia is more it's not sea kale. Maritima is sea kale. Cordifolia, I can't think of the common name for it, but it is, both are beautiful and both are really edible. And again, this picture here is where it has been blanched or forced, like I was telling you that Stephen Barstow is doing. That it does make those young growths incredibly flavorsome. No sign of bitterness at all, and they are just beautifully pan-fried or with butter. Everything. I have a son who's training to be a chef, so butter is like, everything is done with butter, of course. But steamed, blanched in water, and they're lovely. They're so tasty. And then as the plant grows up, particularly cordifolia puts on the most amazing sprays of flowers, and all of those flowers are edible as well. And before it even becomes flowers, the younger shoots, a bit like broccoli, or not broccoli, kales, those young shoots are all edible as well, and well worth having in the garden. And if you have space, they are super. Maritima is probably more architectural. Cordifolia has that brilliant spray of flowers, which is just so beautiful to have. I know not every garden wants to have ramsons in it or wild garlic, but I thought I'd just throw it in, seeing as the time of the year. I know it's just gone slightly over, but maybe it hasn't gone slightly over everywhere, but certainly it's a brilliant plant to have. And like Mary Reynolds was saying last week, if you have a wild area in your garden, it is lovely to have it in your garden. It is a great thing to have, an incredibly useful plant. We make pestos from it all the time. I pickle the little buds there, the little young buds, before they open out into flowers. Beautiful as a caper substitute, and lovely added into salads. Great plant, very useful. And of course, the leaves can be made with soup. I mean, there's so many recipes now for wild garlic. Tons of recipes have been out recently. So there's no excuse not to use those in your cooking. Bamboos then. Bamboo is one of those plants. I remember doing the agroforestry course with Martin Crawford, oh God, 5 or 6 years ago now at this stage. But when we were over there, he grows a heap of different bamboos. And he was saying that, as a crop for his family, they're one of the best spring crops. They eat tons of the young coons. Now you are talking young. I mean, you're talking this size. You're talking no more than 12 inches tall. And what you do is you peel off that outer papery shafts, and then inside you're left with the pit. And the pit you can either eat, like raw, or a lot of them actually are quite bitter, so they need to be steamed. So just a couple of minutes steamed, and then they are absolutely delicious. And there's tons of recipes for bamboo shoots, really well worth looking into. I can't think of a variety that is not edible, but all of this, certainly all of the Phyllostachys family are certainly edible, which is probably the ones that most of us have. Shingiku then, Shingiku, which is Chrysanthemum coronaria, or what do they call it? Garland chrysanthemums. This is a Korean crop or an Asian crop, traditionally grown for its greens. So they don't let it go to flower. They don't let it get any bigger than about maybe 6 inches, and then they harvest it. And it is used in so many different recipes, Asian recipes. It's a great spring crop, actually. Very, very tasty, very, very useful. I mean, use it like you would a spinach crop almost. It is great to have. And then in our garden, I mean, the flowers are too pretty. We just let it go to flower because it's just so beautiful. But the flowers then, all of those daisy type flowers are all edible as well. But the centers are very bitter. So what we do is we just take off the petals, and they are just lovely to have in salads again. Anywhere where you're going to use petals, they are just brilliant. Finally, then we have, in this section, we have Sweet Cicely. Sweet Cicely is an incredible plant, and I don't know why it's not used more in gardens and in cooking. It does spread itself. It's not, I wouldn't say it's invasive because it's easy to pull out, but it does self-seed. So it is something to be wary. Maybe go back to Mary Reynolds' wild garden and keep it down in the wild area, but it is well worth having. Those young leaves, the shoots in sort of a traditional time before we had sugar so readily available, it was used as a sugar supplement or a substitute. And what you would traditionally do is cook rhubarb with it. And it is used to sweeten up the rhubarb, but also the flowers are edible. It's just a really nice thing to have. It's a beautiful plant. Another insect, absolutely great plant to have in the garden. They love it, and it should be used more in gardens. It's so beautiful. So on to the last section there. We're nearly done now, so bear with me. This is just to talk very briefly about Wendy and Orla's wonderful edimental garden. Our garden, Wendy is my really, really good friend. Wait till I show you Wendy. Here she is here. I think Wendy might be online. You online, Wendy? Anyway, Wendy is the most incredible gardener. She is one of the best, she's one of the finest organic growers that we have on this island. She has been growing plants for years and years and years, and she has promoted the organic cause constantly over the years. She was way ahead of her time. She's an incredible gardener, and she has had so many different careers in growing for restaurants and growing for teaching in schools, teaching on courses. How I met Wendy first was on their organic growing course that Susie and Wendy did up in Carrickdulra. That was many, many years ago, and we have been, the three of us, firm friends ever since. But I am so grateful to Wendy and Richard for allowing me to invade their beautiful space and to grow these plants. And it's a wonderful, wonderful thing for me and Wendy, and it has been my solace and my saving grace over this whole COVID experience. The garden is a COVID experiment. It is only just over a year old, and we are so happy with it. It is moving and changing all the time, and it is a constant source of enjoyment. And just to show you a couple of the plants that we have. So here we have up at the very top there, that is oh my God, not chucklecock form, oyster fern. And then there's lovage, of course. Lovage is a wonderful plant, and it's so useful in soups and in savory dishes. If you're going to cook, meats or chicken or anything like that, add a couple of stems of lovage underneath it, and it is a wonderful way to flavor the meat. it is when you let it go to seed, then the seed are incredibly useful in loads of different dishes like curries, potato dishes, omelets even, you know, really, really great like that. Then we have next to it, we have Pachyphragma and Pachyphragma microphylla. You'll see on the upcoming video that I can't remember the name, but it's microphylla. Or macrophyllum, and this is a great plant, and I see it's becoming more and more used now in gardens, which is great to see because it is a wonderful spring plant and a lovely woodlander as well. Actually, it grows well in shade, as it does in full sun. Here in the garden, it's in full sun, but it's those young leaves that are very, very tasty. The flowers are also edible. Down then the bottom right-hand corner, left-hand corner is that beautiful viola that I was telling you about from Jimmy Blake. That one is Invury Beauty. Nuri Beauty, and then which is really, really tasty, really tasty. And can you see just behind it, there's the alpine strawberries. Alpine strawberries we use for the lovely little perennial strawberry. Just keeps going and going and going. It's great, and it self-seeds everywhere too, which is wonderful. And we use it for the little berry, but also for the young leaves. The young leaves are wonderful in salads. And then we have Coleruteria there. And Coleruteria is a tree. It's one of our trees, and that is the Indian rain tree. Now, those young shoots are edible when cooked. Better when cooked, certainly better when cooked, because I've eaten them raw and they're quite strong, but they are better cooked. But again, I'm reluctant to use them at the moment because the tree is just so small. So I got to wait a little bit. And next to it, we have wasabi. So wasabi is a trial, and I know there's you know, typically it should have wetland to grow, or it should have more moist land. I think it would like more moist. Our soil might be a bit dry for it, but we'll see how it goes. A lot of the plants in our gardens are trialed, and we'll see how they progress over time. Now, here is the garden last October, and you can see it's a perennial garden. So you can see it's just going over full bloom at this stage, and it is full to the brim. The video I'm going to show you now in a few minutes is, of course, just done recently, which as all of us perennial gardeners know, in springtime, you're only just getting the budding new growth. So it may look a little bit more sparse, but it is, you can see here, it is wonderful. It is just buoyant with color and with plants and with insects buzzing everywhere. I mean, it was insect heaven, never mind our heaven. But in the front there, you can see yacon, you can see dahlias, agastache, which is a wonderful plant, asters. We've got an eryngium there. We've got loads of mints and loads of perilia, tons and tons and tons of plants. But without further ado, I'm going to see if I can do this video. If the video doesn't work, don't fear. We won't fear. I won't fear, because I have it up on YouTube. So I can send it out tomorrow, or I can attach it to the newsletter. So if it's jumpy on your machine, just go make a cup of tea or something like that. And it takes about 10 minutes to go through this. So I hope it works, but we'll just see. So just bear with me 1 second now, and I'll see if I can get it up here. Wait till I just escape out of that. And let's go into my other share. Let's see, here we go there. I hope you can see that. And we'll play. Hi guys, so we are going to have a little tour of the Edimental Garden, Wendy and Orla's Edimental Garden. Beautiful day here today, so lovely to show off all the plants. This is just a year old, just slightly over than a year old. And as I mentioned, it has been a sort of a COVID project, and it has been my lifesaver over this time, but it's been great fun to do. So it was a field, it was just grass field, and we covered it in mulch and cardboard, and we planted basically straight into it. So it's a work in progress. It's consistent
constantly changing and evolving. We have shrubs and trees in here, so as they grow up, space will move and change, and as it should do, and that's as we want it. At the moment, our priority is to get ground cover in